success does not begin outside of you. It begins within you. Before any achievement takes shape in the physical world, it first takes shape in the unseen world of thought. Every invention, every work of art, every movement that has ever changed humanity started in someone's mind as a single thought. But here is the reality we often ignore. Of the same power that allows thoughts to create can also allow them to destroy. The brain is not neutral. It becomes what we repeatedly feed it. The human mind produces thousands of thoughts every single day. Most of them pass without notice like background noise. But the truth is, those small and seemingly harmless thoughts are quietly building the architecture of your life. If they are rooted in doubt, fear and limitation, if they create walls that box you in, if they are rooted in vision, courage and possibility, they create doors that open to opportunity. What you think about consistently, you move toward consistently. It is not philosophy alone, it is psychology and it is biology. Neuroscience shows us that the brain does not easily distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is real. When you picture yourself succeeding, when you repeat empowering beliefs, your brain activates the same neural pathways as if the success was already happening. Over time, those pathways become stronger. This is why people who constantly dwell on failure often find themselves repeating it. They have trained their brains to expect it. And people who dwell on growth, even in the face of failure, eventually rise. They have trained their brains to create it. Philosophically, this has always been the case. Two people can face the exact same situation, say, the loss of a job. One interprets it as the end, falling into despair. The other interprets it as a beginning, using it as motivation to create something new. The situation is identical, but the inner narrative is different. It is the thought that defines the experience, or not the circumstance. Which means, in the end, your outer life is a reflection of your inner world. But here's where most people struggle. They underestimate the impact of their own inner voice. They let their thoughts wander aimlessly, without direction, as though thoughts are harmless. But thoughts are never harmless. Every thought leaves a trace, every belief leaves an imprint. If repeated often enough, it becomes your default state. If you tell yourself every day that you are not good enough, you will eventually believe it, and then you will act on it, shrinking away from opportunities. If you tell yourself every day that you are capable, resilient, and worthy, you will eventually believe that too, and your actions will align with it. So the question becomes, how do we take responsibility for our thoughts? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to the inner dialogue you live with daily. What words do you use with yourself? Do you encourage or belittle? Do you interpret setbacks as proof of weakness or as invitations to grow? Awareness is uncomfortable because it forces us to confront how much of our suffering is not created by the world, but by the way we think about it. Yet discomfort is necessary. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Once awareness is there, the next step is direction. You must begin to guide your thoughts intentionally, just as you would train a muscle. Replace "I can't" with "how can I?" Replace "this is the end" with "what is this teaching me?" Replace "I am not enough" with "I am learning," "I am growing," "I am becoming." These are not empty affirmations. They are reprogramming tools. Every time you redirect a thought, you carve a new pathway in your brain. With repetition, those pathways become stronger, and eventually they replace the old ones. That is how you train your brain for success, not by avoiding struggle, but by teaching yourself to interpret struggle differently. It is important to remember that successful people are not free from doubt or fear. They feel it too. The difference is they have trained their minds to keep moving despite it. Where an untrained mind magnifies obstacles, a trained mind magnifies possibilities. Where an untrained mind sees only the closed door, a trained mind starts looking for the key. That difference in thought becomes the difference in outcome. The great danger of neglecting this truth is that an undisciplined mind does not remain neutral. It turns against you. Left unchecked, negative thoughts multiply. Fear grows. Self-doubt becomes louder. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to live a life far smaller than the one you were capable of living. The tragedy is not that people fail. The tragedy is that people never try because their own thoughts convince them not to. So I ask you now, what kind of thoughts are you planting in your mind every day? If your brain is a garden, are you nurturing seeds of growth, or are you allowing weeds of fear to take over? Because the truth is, your mind will grow whatever you plant, intentionally or not. Success is not an accident, It is the harvest of disciplined thinking. And here is the insight I want you to leave with: your life will always move in the direction of your dominant thoughts. If you want to change your future, you must first change your mind. Because no matter how much talent, opportunity, or luck you are given, none of it will matter if your thoughts keep telling you that you cannot. Train your brain well, and the world itself will begin to shift in your favor. We often speak of destiny as if it were written in the stars, something fixed and predetermined. But if you look more closely at how lives are actually shaped, you realize destiny is not crafted in a single moment. It is built day by day, choice by choice, through the quiet repetition of habits. What you repeatedly do becomes who you are, and who you are determines the life you create. If thoughts are the seeds of success, then habits are the soil in which those seeds either grow or wither. The brain is designed for efficiency. It doesn't want to spend energy reinventing every action, so it builds shortcuts. This is what we call habits, neural pathways so well rehearsed that your body and mind follow them almost automatically. When you wake up and instinctively reach for your phone, that's a habit. When stress arrives and you immediately respond with anger or food or silence, that's a habit too. Your habits, whether empowering or destructive, are quietly directing the course of your life. And most of us underestimate just how much of our existence is governed by them. Here is the truth: your brain is plastic. Not in the sense of being artificial, but in the sense of being adaptable. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through repeated experience. Every time you perform an action, you are strengthening a circuit. Every time you resist an old pattern, you weaken it. That means you are not condemned to repeat the past. You can literally teach your brain to create a different future. But it requires intention, it requires training. Philosophically, habits represent the bridge between potential and reality. You may dream of becoming successful, but if your daily actions are inconsistent with that vision, the dream remains a fantasy. Success is not built on what you occasionally do, it is built on what you consistently do. Think about it. Reading one book won't change your life, but reading daily will. Going for one walk won't transform your health, but making movement a habit will. Speaking confidently once won't redefine your self-image, but practicing courage daily will. Habits transform abstract intention into lived reality. But here's the challenge: the brain is stubborn. It resists change because habits are comfortable. Even destructive ones provide a strange kind of security. That's why many people stay stuck. They want change, but they don't want discomfort. Yet the discomfort of building new habits is temporary, while the reward is lasting. Each small act of discipline rewires the brain, shifting you from the old self to the new one. The key is to start small. When people think of change, they often picture dramatic shifts: waking up at 4 a.m., running marathons, reading a book a day. But sustainable change rarely begins with extremes. It begins with simple, repeatable actions that your brain can adapt to. Wake up 10 minutes earlier. Read 5 pages. Walk for 10 minutes. These may seem insignificant, but over time they create new pathways in the brain. And just like a river carves its way through stone drop by drop, your habits carve the direction of your life action by action. Psychologically, this process requires patience. Many people give up because they don't see immediate results. They expect transformation in weeks when it often takes months. But think of habits like planting trees. You don't dig up the soil every day to check if the roots are growing. You water, you nurture, you trust the process. Then, one day, you realize the tree has grown strong enough to stand on its own. Habits work the same way. You won't notice change every day, but one day you will wake up and realize your brain naturally chooses the path you once had to force. Another crucial part of rewiring habits is identity. Too often, we try to change behavior without changing the way we see ourselves. We say, "I want to exercise," instead of, "I am the kind of person who values health." We say, "I want to write," instead of, "I am a writer." Identity shapes action. If you see yourself as someone who is lazy, every attempt at productivity will feel unnatural. But when you begin to adopt the identity of discipline, even small wins reinforce that belief, making the habit easier to sustain. The most successful people are not necessarily more gifted. They are simply more consistent. They understand that habits are destiny in slow motion. You don't need to predict the future. You only need to look at your daily patterns. They will tell you exactly where your life is headed. If your habits are aligned with growth, your destiny will expand. If they are aligned with fear and avoidance, your destiny will shrink. It is that simple and that profound. So I ask you, what habits are you rehearsing every day? Are they taking you closer to the life you want or further away from it? Are they training your brain to expect success or to accept mediocrity? Because whether you realize it or not, every day you are either reinforcing old circuits or building new ones. There is no neutral. And here is the closing truth: your habits are not just actions, they are votes. Every time you repeat a habit, you are casting a vote for the person you are becoming. A single vote doesn't decide the election, but consistent votes decide the outcome. The question is, what outcome are you building toward? If you want to rewire your destiny, you must first rewire your habits. Train your brain patiently, consistently, intentionally. And remember, small actions, repeated daily, are not small at all. They are the very architecture of your future. One of the greatest illusions of our age is that success comes from talent alone. We glorify natural intelligence, creativity, and charisma as though these are the deciding factors of a great life. But if we look closely at the people who actually achieve lasting success, a different picture emerges. It is not talent that separates them from the rest. It is their ability to focus their minds and discipline their energy. Talent can open a door, yes, but only discipline allows you to walk through it. Focus is what keeps you moving forward when distractions call from every direction. The human brain is like a spotlight. Wherever it shines, that area becomes illuminated, alive, and active. But here is the challenge in today's world: that spotlight is constantly being hijacked. Notifications, advertisements, endless choices, and noise from every corner compete for our attention. And without discipline, the mind becomes scattered, pulled in 1,000 directions at once. A scattered mind cannot create greatness. It may start many things, but it rarely finishes any. And success, in the end, does not come from starting, it comes from finishing. Philosophically, focus is an act of resistance. It is saying no to the many so you can say yes to the few things that truly matter. It is the recognition that time is finite, energy is limited, and that to waste it is to waste life itself. When you train your brain to focus, you are not simply concentrating. You are reclaiming your freedom. Because every time you give your attention to something, you are giving a piece of your life to it. The question is, are you giving it to what matters? But focus alone is not enough. It must be coupled with discipline, the steady, often unglamorous practice of doing what needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. Discipline is the bridge between intention and reality. You can have the most inspiring vision, the most brilliant ideas, but without the discipline to act on them consistently, they remain dreams. The brain must be trained to persist even when motivation fades. Because motivation is fleeting, it comes and goes with mood and circumstance. Discipline, however, is reliable. It is the quiet force that carries you through when excitement has worn off. This is why mental training matters. Just as athletes train their bodies to endure, to strengthen, to repeat movements until they are second nature, we must train our minds to focus and discipline until they become natural states. It is not about waiting for clarity, it is about creating clarity. It is not about waiting for energy, it is about summoning it. When you direct your brain with discipline, it learns to follow. With time, what once felt impossible becomes routine. Think of the greatest musicians, scientists, leaders, or entrepreneurs. They were not immune to distraction, laziness, or fear, but they mastered the art of choosing long-term purpose over short-term comfort. They focused their energy on what mattered most and disciplined their lives to serve that focus. That is why they stand out. Not because they were superhuman, but because they trained their minds to remain loyal to their vision. From a psychological perspective, focus and discipline create what we call flow, the state in which the brain becomes fully immersed, where distractions fade and productivity multiplies. Flow does not come by accident, it is built by practice. When you repeatedly bring your attention back to the task, when you discipline yourself to keep going despite discomfort, you are conditioning your brain to enter that state more easily. Over time, success becomes less about forcing effort and more about aligning with momentum. But here lies the hard truth: discipline often feels boring. Focus often feels restrictive, and this is why many people resist them. We crave novelty, we chase after easy pleasures, we convince ourselves that freedom means doing whatever we want. But true freedom is not the ability to do anything. It is the ability to do the right thing, at the right time, for the right reason. Discipline does not limit you, It liberates you from chaos. Focus does not narrow your life, it deepens it. So, how do you begin cultivating this? Start with small commitments. Decide what matters to you most in this season of your life and give it your full attention. Train yourself to resist the temptation of doing 10 things halfway. Instead of do one thing well and then another and then another. Over time, this builds confidence, momentum, and mastery. And remember, discipline is not about perfection. It is about persistence. You will slip, you will get distracted, you will fail at times. But every time you return to your focus, you strengthen the muscle of discipline. If you want to train your brain for success, do not just ask yourself what inspires you. Ask yourself what you are willing to stay loyal to, because the mind will follow where loyalty is placed. And if your loyalty is given to distraction, you will scatter your potential. If it is given to discipline, you will multiply it. So I leave you with this thought: success is not a matter of chance, it is a matter of choice. And the choice begins in the mind, what you choose to focus on, and whether you choose to discipline yourself to honor that focus. Master these two off, and you will find that the mind, once your greatest enemy, becomes your most powerful ally. Failure is one of the most misunderstood words in the human vocabulary. From the time we are children, we are taught to fear it, to avoid it, to treat it as something shameful. But the truth is, failure is not the opposite of success. It is a part of success. You cannot train your brain for success without also training it for failure, because life will not go according to plan. You will stumble, you will be rejected, you will try and sometimes fall short. And in those moments, the question is not, did you fail? The real question is, did you rise? Resilience is the ability to rise. It is the strength to get up again when the weight of disappointment tries to keep you down. It is not about ignoring pain or pretending it doesn't hurt. It is about choosing not to let the pain have the final word. Resilience is the muscle that allows the human spirit to keep moving forward, even when every part of you feels like giving up. Psychologically, failure is powerful because it challenges the stories we tell ourselves. When you fail, your mind whispers, "See, I told you that you weren't good enough." It confirms old doubts, revives old insecurities. And if you are not careful, you begin to confuse a failed attempt with a failed identity. But there is a difference, a very important difference, between failing at something and being a failure. One is temporary, the other is permanent. The only way failure becomes permanent is if you stop trying. Philosophically, resilience is deeply tied to perspective. The same event that breaks one person strengthens another. Why? Because of the meaning they give it. One sees failure as punishment, the other sees it as instruction. One sees it as the end of the road, the other sees it as a detour. And here is the beautiful irony: the more you fail and choose to rise, the less afraid you become of failure. It loses its power over you. Instead of being a wall, it becomes a stepping stone. Think of history's great achievers. Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Each of those so-called failures was data, information, feedback. Of J.K. Rowling's manuscript for Harry Potter was rejected by a dozen publishers before it became one of the most beloved series in the world. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison before leading South Africa into a new era. Each of these stories reminds us that failure is not the end of the story. It is a chapter in it. Resilience is what allows the story to continue. But resilience does not come automatically. The brain by nature is wired to avoid pain. When we fail, the immediate response is to withdraw, to retreat into safety. Training your brain for resilience means teaching it to interpret failure differently. Instead of seeing it as an attack on your worth, you begin to see it as training for your growth. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you ask, "What now?" That shift in questioning moves you from paralysis to progress. Resilience is also built through small daily practices. Every time you face discomfort, instead of running from it, you strengthen resilience. Every time you commit to trying again after a setback, you reinforce it. Just like muscles grow by being broken down and rebuilt, your capacity to endure grows when it is tested. And with each test, you discover that you are stronger than you realized. Here is another truth. Resilience is not about toughness alone. It is about flexibility. A tree that is too rigid will snap in the storm, but a tree that bends will survive it. Resilient people bend, they adapt. They do not cling to a single path so tightly that they lose sight of the bigger picture. They adjust, they learn, they change course when needed. And because of that, they endure. But perhaps the deepest form of resilience is not just rising for yourself, but rising with purpose. When your vision is strong enough, failure becomes fuel. You stop seeing setbacks as reasons to quit and start seeing them as evidence that you are on the path of growth. Because growth, by its very nature, is uncomfortable. If it were easy, everyone would do it. The presence of failure does not mean you are off course. It often means you are on the right one. So I ask you, how do you respond when failure knocks on your door? Do you retreat into fear, or do you rise with resilience? Do you allow one rejection to define your future, or do you use it to refine your approach? The way you answer those questions will determine the quality of your life. Because no matter how much talent, intelligence, or opportunity you have, without resilience, you will not sustain success. But with it, you become unstoppable. Let me leave you with this: failure is not the enemy, surrender is. The people who live fulfilled lives are not the ones who never fail. They are the ones who never give failure the power to end their story. Train your brain to see failure as feedback, to rise again and again, and you will discover that resilience is not just about surviving. It is about transforming setbacks into stepping stones and using them to climb higher than you ever thought possible. One of the most overlooked powers of the human mind is its ability to imagine, not just to daydream or escape, but to intentionally create vivid inner pictures that shape reality itself. Visualization is not a mystical idea, it is a psychological and neurological tool that athletes, leaders, and creators have used for decades to achieve extraordinary results. When you visualize success with clarity, you are not simply wishing for it, you are rehearsing it. You are preparing your brain and body to recognize it when the opportunity arrives. Think about it this way: the brain does not fully distinguish between what you vividly imagine and what you actually experience. When a pianist mentally practices a piece of music without touching the keys, the same areas of the brain light up as if they were physically playing. When an athlete pictures themselves running the perfect race, the brain sends signals to the muscles as though the body were already in motion. This is why visualization is so powerful. It allows you to train without movement, to prepare without action, and to condition your mind for outcomes before they ever occur. But visualization is not the same as wishful thinking. Wishful thinking is passive, it waits and hopes. Visualization is active, it creates and prepares. To visualize effectively, you must engage your senses. Don't just see the image, feel the emotions, hear the sounds, notice the details. If your vision is to speak confidently on a stage, don't just picture yourself standing there. Imagine the lights, the audience leaning in, the rhythm of your voice, the feeling of strength in your body. By doing this, you are teaching your brain to treat success as familiar rather than foreign. Philosophically, visualization taps into a profound truth: the outer world is often shaped by the inner one. Before you can achieve something externally, you must first accept it internally. If your mind cannot hold the image of success, your actions will unconsciously sabotage it. People often reject opportunities not because they lack ability, but because they cannot see themselves succeeding. Their imagination is locked in failure. Visualization unlocks that prison. It gives the mind a new reference point, a new identity to live into. This is why so many successful individuals credit visualization as a key practice. Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, used to rehearse every race in his mind down to the smallest detail. The strokes, the turns, even the unexpected moments like water filling his goggles. So when his goggles actually did fail in an Olympic race, he didn't panic. His brain had already rehearsed the scenario. He swam by counting his strokes and won gold. That is not luck, that is the result of deliberate mental rehearsal. On a psychological level, visualization works because it programs the brain's reticular activating system, the filter that determines what information gets your attention. If you consistently imagine success, your brain begins to notice opportunities aligned with that vision. It is not that opportunities suddenly appear, it is that you were blind to them before. Visualization sharpens your focus and primes your perception, making you more likely to act when the chance arrives. But here's the key: visualization must be paired with action. The purpose of seeing success in your mind is not to replace effort, but to direct it. When you repeatedly imagine yourself succeeding, your confidence grows and your actions become more aligned with that vision. You take risks you might otherwise avoid, you persist when others give up, and you carry yourself with the certainty of someone who has already seen the outcome. The mind leads and the body follows. At the same time, visualization is not just about the final result. It is also about rehearsing the process. Too many people imagine only the end goal, the medal, the applause, the reward. But real mental training involves picturing the journey, the hours of practice, the moments of fatigue, the temptations to quit, and then seeing yourself overcome them. This way, when those challenges arrive in reality, you are not surprised. You have already faced them in your mind and trained yourself to rise above them. Another aspect of visualization is identity. Instead of merely seeing yourself achieving something, begin to see yourself as the kind of person who achieves it. Don't just picture yourself writing a book. See yourself as a writer. Don't just picture yourself running a marathon. See yourself as an athlete. Identity fuels consistency. When your vision of yourself changes, your habits naturally begin to follow. The brain is a stage, and whatever performance you rehearse most often eventually becomes your reality. If you rehearse fear of hesitation and failure, you will perform them with mastery. If you rehearse confidence, clarity, and persistence, you will perform those instead. That is the choice visualization gives you to train your mind to expect the best, to be prepared for the obstacles, and to step into the person you are capable of becoming. So I ask you, what vision are you rehearsing daily? Are you unconsciously replaying images of failure, rejection, and weakness? Or are you consciously building images of strength, growth, and success? Because whether you realize it or not, your brain is always rehearsing something. The only question is whether it is rehearsing for defeat or for victory. And let me leave you with this: success is lived twice, first in the mind, then in the world. If you cannot see it within, you will not hold it without. But if you train your brain to visualize success vividly and consistently, you will find that when opportunity comes, it feels less like a surprise and more like a memory. Because in truth, you have already been there. You have already seen it, and now you are simply stepping into the reality you trained your mind to create.